Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today. We're going to be talking about single pane of glass for Cherwell, focused on StrataCom's Kanban board functionality. Our presenter today is Eric Kruger. He's one of our principal consultants and is leading the development for some of our Cherwell add-on solutions. If you have questions as we go, feel free to use the raise your hand functionality, or you can put questions in the chat and I'll interrupt Eric as we go from time to time with your questions. We'll also keep the lines open at the end of the session for any questions you may have. We are recording today's session, so if you'd like to rewatch it or share with others in your team, we will be recording and sending the links out in the coming days when we get it uploaded to our site. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric to visit about our Kanban board solution. Eric, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Laura. I'm going to start with a little slideshow. And if you've seen our Kanban boards before, some of this will be review, but we do have some new functionality that I'm going to introduce. And we came out with about just a few months ago, so it's pretty recent, but it allows you to see and work with a bunch of different types of objects in Cherwell in a single place. So we call that our single pane of glass, or in the app, they're actually called unified boards. But so we'll just talk a brief introduction to StrataCom, a little bit of terminology and features, and then I'll jump into the demo. So maybe 5 minutes of this slideshow. So a little bit about StrataCom. We were founded in 1997. We're an Ivanti technical alliance and professional services partner. So we've got a bunch of complementary products for Ivanti and Cherwell, and we also do a lot of professional services, implementations, and we help customers with their Ivanti and Cherwell implementations.
Hey, Eric.
To build. Yeah.
If you've got a deck running, I just see your face. I don't see the deck yet.
I forgot to share. I'm new at this. Okay.
Looks good.
There's my deck. So we have a large ITSM consulting team focused on Ivanti neurons and Cherwell, and we have a bunch of consultants scattered across the U.S. Nobody offshore currently, so you'll get to talk to somebody in your time zone. Chances are, or around your time zone. We do have this. This is kind of a list of the products that we have. So we have a native mobile client for Cherwell that's really popular. We have these Kanban boards, which I'll show you today, and also the Gantt chart, which I'll also show today. I'll do a little bit on that. The Gantt charts also can show multiple objects. There's a little less use cases for those, but if you're managing projects, the Gantt charts are an excellent way, and they actually come with the Kanban boards. You can buy Kanban and Gantt together. And then we've got the Smart Bot, which was our latest release. It's a Teams bot that can interact with Cherwell and your customers. So you can kind of see the GIF moving down there. So we've also got a few other things like a scheduling calendar that some of our customers use. And then a few maps that we've created for Cherwell. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of Kanban. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of these Kanban boards, basically cards on a board that you can move around. So what are some of the benefits of using Kanban with Ivanti and Cherwell? The biggest thing, I think, is just the ease of use. So these things are extremely easy to use. The text can update tickets just by dragging and dropping them onto a column or running actions from the cards. So the cards have little action buttons on them that you can run, or you can just drag and drop them to assign them to people or to move them from status to status. Just really simple to use. Great for teams that are out there that maybe don't need the full functionality of the full Cherwell client, but just want to work their tickets. Consistent interface across all the Cherwell modules, so all of the screens are going to look the exact same. The cards are going to look pretty much the same. Everything kind of works the same. So you can work with approvals the same way you work with tasks, basically dragging and dropping, or clicking on actions on the cards to work with them. It's fast and responsive. So we built this from scratch using API calls. We don't have a lot of the other baggage that Cherwell's got wrapped around their client and their web client. So people always ask us, is it really this fast? I mean, or is it just your sandbox? I'd say overall it's pretty fast. You'll notice a speed improvement. You shouldn't notice any slowness ever, really. So they really don't have any unneeded features, resulting in extremely fast user interface and live updates. And one of the things we use in the background are WebSockets to update tickets, and I'll show you how that works. But basically, if somebody updates a ticket, all the boards subscribe to updates. So if you update a ticket and move it from new to in progress, if that ticket's on anybody else's board, it will move on their board to in progress without any, like, immediately as soon as you change it or within a second. So you get that live view of the data. A little bit of terminology, just Kanban is a visually depiction of the tickets. A board, we just call it a board. Basically, a board is a stored query in Cherwell. So it's a query that we're running and putting cards on. Each board displays a Cherwell record as a card. So every card that you see on the Kanban, it's just a Cherwell record. Drop action is an action that we perform when you drop a card onto a column. I'll show you what that looks like. Swim lane is just a vertical column that live underneath the horizontal columns. And swim lanes, it's a nice way to group data. We came out with some more filtering that didn't make swim lanes obsolete, but made them less necessary. So I'll show you how the filtering and the swim lanes work. Unified board is a Kanban board that allows you to work with multiple types of records in Ivanti and Cherwell. So you can have multiple records on the same board. So I've got some really cool examples of that, so you can kind of see the benefit of that. And then WebSockets SignalR. WebSockets is a generic standard of communication over like an open socket. So you can make essentially static HTML pages live. And SignalR is Microsoft's implementation of that. And so we use SignalR to move these cards around on other people's boards. Like as you move them around, you can move cards around on other people's boards if they have the same cards as you or similar cards. So I'll show you what that looks like on a team board. So everybody on the team gets instant updates of those. So what are some of the use cases that we're seeing customers use these boards for? Resolver groups, really popular for resolver groups. Teams of users who get assigned tickets, right? So maybe it's a NOC, maybe it's just a network team, but maybe they're used to using Jira or something else, and they're kind of used to this card, so they're requesting this access. So groups of these users that just want to work their tickets. So, and the fast load times and responsiveness makes it really easy for them to keep on top of their ticket queue. And these things get refreshed right out of Cherwell every couple minutes, and you get the live data, of course, if anybody updates from another board. Frontline triage team. So I've had customers set up their frontline teams with a list of teams at the top. So they're most commonly assigned to teams. So maybe they're like their password reset team, their laptop team, or desktop team, the different teams that they would assign tickets to. So when these tickets come in, typically via email, they're triaging them, and they can just drag and drop them from unassigned out to a team to assign them to really quickly. Same thing for people. So for group managers, you might be managing a team of people, really easy to see who's working on what, and hey, who should this ticket go to next? Or that team can easily see what's next in line. So, and if a lot of these Kanban boards are used by developers, and they'll have a backlog, but you can also have a backlog, say, of incidents, everything that's new that's assigned to one of your teams. So you may want to prioritize that backlog, and the Kanban boards will keep the priority. So if you move a card up in the column, it will stay there for everybody. So if you're telling people to pull off the top of the column and you move a high priority ticket to the top, that'll be the next ticket that people will pull. And a little bit about these unified boards, which is a little bit newer, our single pane of glass. These boards load all the tickets from the underlying board. So essentially the way we make these is we take existing boards or make new boards, and we just combine them all into one unified board. So you just map the columns from the underlying boards into a common structure. I'll show you what that looks like. It's really quite simple. This allows users to see all their tickets in one place and act on them the same way. And automatic rules that we have don't allow users to drag and drop cards to columns that are not mapped to an underlying board. So the example I have is I have approvals on a board with tasks, incidents, changes, and problems, and you can't drop an approval on in progress. You can approve it, but you can't, the board won't let you do that. So let's take a look. I don't know why I had a question mark after demo. Does anyone want to see a demo? All right, so I'm going to pull this over here. Oops. Go into here, our Kanban boards. And I'm just going to start with some of our basic boards, kind of our single object boards. This development request I always have come up first, but I rarely show it first, but maybe this time I will. These are actually incidents that I've kind of made look like development requests. So you can see I've got this backlog in here, and then I've got different statuses. And one of the things we can do in here is we can create what we call virtual statuses. So they're mapped to actual statuses in Cherwell. So ready to build might be in progress, and block might be on hold or pending, and ready for test might be something else. But they're mapped back to statuses in Cherwell, and they'll just work on this board. So since we're not storing ready to build in Cherwell anywhere, it'll just work on this board. If you do need to report on that, I wouldn't go with a virtual column. I'd probably do what we've done for a lot of other customers, just created another field to hold these kind of pseudo statuses. So if you've got some workflow that you want to do an incident that you don't necessarily have workflow for an incident, you can kind of create your own workflow using these cards. So let me go up to, I'm just going to start with kind of my standard. We'll take a look at these open second level incidents. So you can see these cards, they all have actions on here. So we can do any of these actions on here. This scenario is a team of second level, and you can see what everybody's working on. So I've got Andrew, Henry, Bruce, Emma, and Claire. So I can see what everybody's working on. I can see Claire and Emma and Bruce working on quite a few things. And then we've got this unassigned column over here. So the unassigned column is all the tickets assigned to second level who don't have an assignee yet. So in this scenario, if I want to assign it to somebody, I can just drag and drop it over. So you can do a lot of neat things with this. So for example, if Bruce goes on vacation and he's got all these tickets that he's maybe working on, you can either assign them to someone else or just put them back in the queue for somebody else to pick up. And then we'll just get rid of Bruce here for a little while. And if you have a ticket that you want somebody to pick up, maybe it's a higher priority. I don't think I have any high. See if I have any high priorities in here. No. You can just drag it. So if you say, oh, this desktop client ticket should be worked on next, you can just drag it to the top. And then if people are pulling from the top, let's say Andrew gets rid of all his tickets, he could pull this and work on this next, and it'll assign it to him. So, and from these actions, you can really do any action that you have in Cherwell. So think about the things that you do in Cherwell: adding notes, changing status, assigning to teams and users, maybe creating related records like tasks, things like that, adding attachments. You can do all that from these cards. So for example, if I just wanted to add a note to this ticket, I can just click the add a note button, and I'll get a little interface that asks me to add a note, and that will add the note to the ticket. Now, if I want to see more information about this ticket, we have this little hamburger menu you can press and just get a view only. So this is kind of our mobile form viewer of this ticket. You can see here's the note I added, and you can also have access to the actions here. If you just want a standard edit, you can do that also. So we've got an edit screen. Now, I don't have a lot of fields on here, but we can put whatever fields on that you want for edit. So you can essentially make it look just like your Cherwell screen if you want, or you can actually jump out to Cherwell. So we can give an action to jump into the Cherwell web client. So if you've got maybe some really complex screens you don't want to necessarily have recreated in this format, you can have them jump into the Cherwell web client or the Cherwell Windows client. We can launch either from this. So you can kind of go back and forth. You can put board links in Cherwell, and you can link back to Cherwell from here. I can open this up, and it'll take forever to load, but I'll kind of keep an eye on it. So let's take a look at another board. So I'm going to just look at the same board. I just added a swim lane to this one, so we can see what everybody's working on and easily see what the status is. So it's essentially grouped by status. So I can see what's new for everybody, what's assigned, what's in progress, and as those move around, I'll see those move around. So that's what swim lanes are for, is for grouping. You can see I don't have the swim lane under unassigned because these are all going to be new typically, so I don't need the swim lane there. So you can actually pick which columns you want the swim lane on, but generally I have it either not on the first one or not on the last one, so I don't break up the swim lane in the middle of the screen. We can do the same thing with any object. So here's second level tasks. So these are the tasks that are assigned to second level. So same concept, we've got an unassigned column and the user's over here. If I want to assign it to somebody, I can do that. Now, if I have a bigger board, let's just say I'm looking at all the open incidents. So this is more of a traditional status-driven Kanban board, but this is all open incidents. So somebody might look at this, maybe an incident manager, something like that. And a little bit about the layout of these cards. We've got these things we call tags. These tags are just fields in Cherwell, so you can see when I hover over them, you can see what the label is. And they're really easy to configure and add new tags. But one of the neat things we added is tag filtering. So I can go up here on the tags and I can filter down by anything. You can see my priorities are kind of mixed up. But if I just wanted to look at priority 1s and 2s, I can do that. And you can see I've got some coloring on the priority 1s and 2s on this board. So we can do coloring, and we can also do different designs on this border so they stick out. And I can do so like, are there any 1s and 2s for first level support? How about for second level support? So you can really filter based on really anything that you want. And you can just get rid of these. So this allows you to take a pretty big board and kind of narrow it down and look at, like if you just wanted to look at the HR tickets, you can do that. Maybe I just want to look at HR. Are there any priority 1s? No. 2s? Yep. So you can see what's on the board. So it allows you to take a big board and break this down. And these tags will stay basically until you log back in, or if you do like a hard refresh on this page, it'll get rid of the tags. But you could work in a tagged board like this all day if you wanted to. So I could look for just my tickets on here if I wanted to. Right there I am. So I could see all my tickets on this board. So really great for like if you're a manager and you want to have a board that you can just drill down on and look at like multiple teams tickets, but you want to stay on the same board. Makes it really easy to do that. So those tags are a really nice searching feature. Now, a lot of times I get a question, where are these cards being stored and how are you syncing them with Cherwell? And the easy answer is they're being stored in Cherwell. We're not syncing them at all. So we update these tickets in Cherwell live. So if I take a ticket and I drag it from new to assigned, as soon as this runs, as soon as this completes, it updates the ticket in Cherwell. So this is a drop action. So when I drop that card on assigned, I got a little pop-up because we have a rule on this board that says, hey, if you drop it on assigned, you need to assign it to somebody. So I'm actually going to assign this to me. And then that'll run. And as soon as you see that little flashed in the EK, which is me, this we call our little quick assign, so I can assign it to other people in that are on this board with that. But as soon as that changes to me, that's a round trip back from Cherwell. So if I drag this from assigned to in progress, I don't know if you'll be able to see, but as soon as that card flashes, that's update back from Cherwell. So it's really fast. We don't store this data anywhere else except for Cherwell. So this is basically just a front end that's layered right on the top of Cherwell. And there's nothing really else going on in the middle to synchronize these. All right, so
we've got a question that came in.
Okay.
Who has access to move cards?
So anybody with access to the board can move the cards. Now, a rule around, if you're enforcing rules on the Cherwell backend, the board will enforce those rules. So for example, if for some reason I can't update a ticket if it's assigned to someone else. So if you've got a Cherwell rule in the background, the cards will enforce that. Cherwell will actually come back and tell us, hey, this person doesn't have rights to like say change the status on this. But we can also do some other things on the boards. We can't stop them from dragging and dropping, but we can tell them that they can't drop on there. So typically I have this turned on from new to resolved. So you can see I've got this message here that we can't drop this card here. The business rules don't allow it. So we can write business rules on every column that will stop people from dragging and dropping in certain scenarios. So one of the things about security on these is that you can assign these boards to users based on their Cherwell role, team membership, or name. So you wouldn't see all the boards that your company has. You would probably only see, maybe you just have a unified board that you would see, maybe my team's unified tickets. You're probably only going to see 1 or 2 boards. All the other boards can be hidden from you. So so if you've got like a HR ticketing system, only people that have like that HR role or are in an HR team would be able to even see those boards. So this list is typically pretty small for customers. Their users can generally see 1 or 2, maybe 3 boards. Was that it, Laura, for questions?
Yes, that's all we have so far.
All right, sounds good. All right, I didn't want to show that one. I wanted to see All right, let's see. One other feature that we have is we can drill down from a board into another board. So a great use case for Kanban boards is project management. Let's face it, a lot of projects are managed with tasks, and a lot of project managers, especially if you're more of an agile shop, you'll be used to kind of this Kanban or the Scrum board concept. So managing projects or releases is a great way. So this is I have ITPT loaded in the system. If anybody wants to see PPM boards, I also have a PPM system I could bring up, but this is ITPT. So I can actually drill down. I think this one's got, let me just check. Yeah, so this one has 25 tasks. We can see this project has 25 tasks. I can actually drill down from this board into this ITPT project's task board. So if I'm looking and saying, oh, I wonder how our upgrade to Cherwell 10 is doing, I can just click on this and it'll take me right to the Cherwell 10 board, which is the IT-1 project. And I can see, wow, I've got a lot of projects in new, and I've got 4 on hold, and I've got a bunch that are closed, but none that are in progress. So you can actually see the status of all these. And this is just poking into Cherwell. It's just running a query that says, hey, give me all of IT-1 projects tasks. So a really easy way to bounce back and forth between like your projects and then the task boards. So you can check the status of all these tasks. One of the things I want to add is actually a little count on this, so I can see, like this one only has 1 task, but I could pop into there and say, oh, what's the status of this task? Oh, it's new. So you can also see it, if you just pop in to here, we can hit that project own task button. We can see all the tasks, and I've got way too many columns in here, but so you can see the tasks that way. You probably want to have less columns. So that's another neat feature, is kind of the navigation from like a parent level board to a child level board. So great for project management. And you can do that on anything. Let me see if I've actually got, can't remember if I set this up for changes. Yeah, I do. So I do the same thing for changes. I don't know if any of my changes have tasks, but you can drop into a changes board. So if you're managing changes and those changes have tasks, you can drop into that board too. So this one doesn't happen to have any, but all right. So let's take a look at the unified board concept. So I showed you the second level. So this is the second level unified board. So this has got tasks and incidents on it. And you can see under the tags, I've got a filter for object, and you can call that whatever you want. I just call it object. But every object, every underlying board that's on here will show up here. So I can see I've got incidents and tasks. So if I just wanted to see the incidents, I could do that. If I wanted to see the tasks, I could check that. So otherwise, they can see the incidents and the tasks here. We've also got a tag on the card that shows what they are, and we can also color the side differently if we want, or put a different pattern in here. But basically, these work the same, and we can drag and drop. If it's a task or an incident, it doesn't really matter. We can drag and drop it to that user and assign them that task and incident. And then they can either use this board to manage their tasks and incidents, or like a my unified board. So I'm going to jump into unified my tickets, which is kind of the monster board that I built. So you can see this has got a lot more types of records. This is just tickets. You can see everything's assigned to me. And I've got approvals, changes, incidents, problems, and tasks, which are, I don't have PPM loaded on here. So these are the task object, all the ITPT tasks, all the change tasks, all the service request or incident tasks would also be on here because they're the same object. So, but if you have multiple task objects, which I know I'm working with a customer right now, has like 5 or 6 different task objects, you can combine all those onto one board, no problem, and see them all in one place. Now you can see I've done a little bit of shading and coloring and decorations on these. So each one of these kind of has a different color. So we can see changes, I just colored purple, so they're really easy to pick out. Problem records, I colored orange. We have 5 different borders that you can choose. We've got this double line border that's for approvals. We've got the solid border for incidents, and then I've got the dash border for tasks. So you can do a combination, like you can do dash or like borders and colors, or you can just do borders, or you could just do colors. Some people like to use the colors for priorities. You could color anything with a high priority red, but use the the borders, the different border designs to easily distinguish what is what. So we just added this. The customer actually requested it just to make it easier to see what was on the board, like where are my tasks, where are my problems, where are my changes. So you can also always narrow the board down. Like if you had a bunch of things on there and said, oh, I really want to work on my task today, you can narrow it down just to tasks. So you can have those tasks in there. And so, but these work how you'd expect. I can take an incident and drag it to in progress. That just changes the status. Now, if I drag it to on hold, you'll notice that on hold isn't really an incident status. That's a task status. But I just name the column on hold. We can, in these unified boards, we can name the column whatever we want. I'll show you how that works. But if I drop it on there, I have a drop action that says, why do you want to set it to pending? I'll say customer is unavailable. So even though it says on hold, I'm actually mapping that to pending in incident. So I could have called the column on hold / pending or something like that. Might have been a little easier to decipher, but I just called it on hold. Now, if I have an approval, if say I'm an approver and I go in here and I'm like, okay, I need to approve this. If I say, well, this approval is in progress, approvals don't really have like an in progress status, right? Typically they might, but generally they're waiting, which I've got mapped to new. You could also map that to in progress if you wanted to. So the status of these is waiting. I actually put the status on here so you could see. But if I try to drag it to in progress, I get this little message on here that says, hey, the unified board column in progress is not mapped to any column of the sub board, my approval. So it's the my approvals board. It just doesn't have a column for in progress. So the board is just telling me, hey, you can't do that. So if I want to approve it, I can approve it there. I think if I deny this, I have a drop action. Yeah, if I deny this, I have a drop action for approver comments that I can put in there. So, and likewise, if I try to take a change and approve it, I get the same message. Like it says, hey, the unified board column approve is not mapped to any column of the subboard my open normal changes. So I just don't have it mapped. Technically, a lot of changes could be approved. So maybe we would want to map that so you could actually drag the change to approve it. But I don't have that mapped out. So, and all the actions work on these too. So you can see like the approvals have different actions than the changes, and the changes have different actions than the incident. So it doesn't really matter what object you're on. You can edit these. So if I want to reassign this record, or I want to become the owner, I'm already the owner of this task. Because if I wanted to edit this task, I get the task edit screen. If I wanted to edit this change, I get my change edit screen. So whatever object you're on, it'll launch the right screen, and it really is a nice way to work with all my records. And so one of the nice things you can do with this is you can actually prioritize. So if I've got changes that I should really work on my changes first, I'm just going to prioritize those and drag those to the top. They'll always stay in the top. So the Kanban boards are actually storing that information. It's not being stored anywhere in Cherwell. Like you couldn't look at Cherwell and look at this ticket and say, oh, I see it's first on Eric's assigned column in his Kanban board. We just don't have a place to put that in Cherwell. So we actually just store that with the board, this card order. So every time you shuffle cards around, we're just storing the order of the cards. So every time we draw this board, we look at the card order. And if something new pops in, it generally will pop to the bottom of the board. Now, an interesting thing that we've got is what I talked about a little earlier, is that we're using SignalR, Microsoft's implementation of WebSockets, to live update this data. And that just means if I'm on another screen, but it could be another person doing this, if I'm moving cards over on this other screen, you'll just see them change on the screen that they're going to. So if you're working on a board, you probably won't see that too much on a My Tickets board. But if you're in something like this unified My Teams tickets, which has got all of my Teams tickets in one place, and actually this is a much smaller board. I just have incidents and tasks on this board. But you can see like there's a lot of tickets in here because this is a test site, and I think first level support has lots and lots of tickets. So this is where you would probably see tickets move over more than likely, is like a unified My Teams, where things are being like moved from assigned to in progress. And so things like that. So you'd probably see it move like that. Not so much on probably a My Tickets board. All right, Laura, do we have any more questions?
Nothing more so far.
Okay, sounds good. I do want to show you, I want to show you quickly the mapping. So how do we map these unified boards? Because some people might be a little confused about how this works. So I'm just taking, here's my unified My Tickets board. This is kind of our admin tool. So everybody has access to this admin tool that has this product. So I defined like manually basically what the board columns are. So for my unified My Tickets, I hand typed in all of these, right? So I'm saying these are the columns that I want, and they just map to these columns up here. And then I added boards. So I added a subboard, added these boards as subboards. So I just click add subboard, and you pick the board you want to add. And then once you add the board, what happens is it'll say, hey, the subboard has these columns on the left. So the subboard has new. What should that map to in the unified column? It should map to new. So it gives you a list of all to map to. So you can see down here, like in my open problem, what was it? My normal changes maybe. Right, so I've got like closed mapped in the subboard. Well, I don't want to show closed changes, so I just don't map it. So they just don't show up on this board. But like assessing, well, where should I map assessing? So I'm going to map it to assigned. But you could add another column to map it to, or you could call it assigned/assessing, or you could map it to in progress. So these don't really, these top level columns in unified boards, they don't really make a difference what you call them. You could call them backlog, working on, and completed if you wanted. And you can actually map multiple statuses to the same column. So you could have assigned and in progress mapped to like a WIP or work in progress column. So you could do that. So you could have less columns. And then we just, when you drag it to the next column, we just pick the first status to assign it to. Out of there. So you can do some really cool things with mapping. But this is basically how it works. So once you've got the board, the underlying boards built. So if you're an existing customer and you have boards you want to merge, this is how you merge them. If you're a new customer, we have to build the actual underlying board first. But that's usually pretty typically simple. And then once we got the underlying boards built, we just map them into the unified board. So I just think this is a really great way. I know Cherwell's got like the My Work dashboard where you can kind of see everything in a grid. But it's a little bit, you kind of have to leave that grid in order to work on the tickets. And where this Kanban concept is, you always kind of have a view of the tickets. You see things that pop in new, and you're always kind of on this screen, so you can always see the status of this. And for something like a development board, so if I just pop back into that development board, you know, if a team is working on this, the entire team can work off this board. Everybody can see, you know, what's in progress, you know, who's assigned to what, who's working on what. So really neat. So if there's no questions, I'm going to jump into a little bit about the Gantt charts and show you those. So the Gantt charts are great for, they really only have one purpose, and that's really to manage projects or for project management. So we can see this is an editable Gantt, and this will work. So this is ITPT. You can also do a Gantt for an incident. So I've built a Gantt here for an incident. So this is an incident Gantt where the incident is the parent, and then all the tasks are underneath here. And they're the tasks for that incident. So if you're managing a service request, possibly with tasks, you can do that. And we can group these. So if I want to group these by user, I can group them by user. I can group by, there's probably maybe duration. Nothing really matches duration. So normally you're going to group by user or team, something like that. So you can see what everybody's working on. And these are live updates. So if I shrink this, the end date, that'll change the end date. Or if I move this around, that'll change the start date and end date. And I can also just double click on these to edit them. So I can go in here and edit this task. So I can edit the task right from here. I can also add tasks from here. So if I want to add a new task, let's just go back to no grouping. Say I want to add, I've got kind of two trains here. I've got like the green basically means it's a parent, and then the blue are the children. So I've got two parents there, 1 and 2. So if I want to add a new number 2, I can do that. I can just add that right from here, and it'll show up on the Gantt. So really neat functionality. And change management also, we can do that from. So really any object in Cherwell that supports kind of this parent-child. So you could do like a major incident with sub-incidents, or You can also just do straight objects. So we have customers that have PPM and they just want to see all their projects and their demands in one Gantt chart. So they don't really have any children. I'm just showing projects and demand. So you can also link them together, and we can do some cool stuff like turn on auto scheduling. So if I've got tasks that are reliant on other tasks and I want them to reschedule, so if I have to move this task out to start on the 6th, it'll automatically schedule all these other related tasks out. So, or back. So you can turn auto scheduling on. So this is actually going out to Cherwell and updating these 7 tasks every time I move this around. It does 7 task updates. You can kind of see them update over here as they update back. So you can see it won't let me drag that one there. But I can move it out. So I can move these children out, and then we can see critical path. So if anything is affected, I call this critical path, but if anything is going to be affected by like upstream, so it turns into critical path. So we kind of got that feature. So, and you can also group from here. So if I group by user, I can group that and still move things around. When you're grouping, the parent tasks actually turn into your group headers because you're not sorting your tasks by parent task anymore. You're kind of sorting them by whatever you're grouping by. So that's a difference, is you can't see your parent task, but a lot of people like this view because they can see what everyone is working on.
Hey, Eric, we had a question.
Okay.
Can the Kanban board be integrated with Microsoft TFS and Azure too?
Yeah, so that is coming. So one of the things, once we added our unified boards, we discovered that, hey, we've kind of managed now to put multiple objects on the same board. So what we're working on right now is combining like Ivanti boards and Cherwell boards into one. So if a customer has Ivanti and Cherwell, they may or may not. It's more of a proof of concept for us to prove that we can take 2 vendors and merge them together in one board. But our 2 next targets for like connectors that we're going to have for our Kanban is Jira. So you'll be able to merge your Cherwell and Jira tickets into one Kanban board, and TFS or Azure DevOps. So you'll be able to merge your, like, say, Azure DevOps boards and your Cherwell boards together, or just look at your Azure DevOps board. So those are the 2 other vendors that we have targeted for our boards right now. Hopefully we'll have one or both of them done by the end of the year, but we're pretty busy working on the convergence platform right now with Ivanti to make sure that all of our customers that decide to move to the Converge platform, everything works the exact same. So that's kind of our focus right now. But as soon as that's kind of wrapped up, we want to add the multiple vendors. So we're going to create connectors for those different vendors, and we'll kind of do it based on customer ask. But right now, Jira is really popular, and Azure DevOps or TFS is really popular. So those are the 2 that we're going to target. So then instead of doing an integration, maybe instead of doing an integration from Cherwell to Jira, you would just have a Kanban board with both tickets on there. So if you've got developers that get Cherwell tickets and Jira tickets, they can just look at one place to work both of their tickets. Were there any other questions, Laura?
Nope, that was the only one.
Okay. I might have to go back here a little ways to get some good data, but we've also got this drag and drop scheduling calendar. So it kind of works as you would expect. You can drag and drop on to move them around. You can also double click on these to edit them, just like on the Gantt chart. But this can also have multiple objects, so we can see this has got change, ITPT, and tasks. So I must not have create new turned on here. Normally to create new, you just click and drag. Let me see if I can do it here. Oh, I don't have it turned on. You would just click and drag to add a new object, but we have a few customers using this. If you're doing a lot of scheduling, this might really help you out because you can see everybody's schedule. And this is just everything, but you can have calendars for teams or specific users, really whatever you want, and then just drag and drop and see their schedule. So if you're scheduling like field text or something like this might be a really good way to do it. So some customers have talked to us also about using the Gantt because they can really see what people are scheduled out for on the Gantt, and they can add. So that might also work too. And you can you have a little bit better zooming features because you can zoom out pretty wide in here, and you can zoom in right down to the day too. And so that might be another way to do scheduling. So if you're interested in anything that you've seen, we can set up, typically we can set up a demo site for you. So we can actually connect our Kanban boards and Gantt to your Cherwell system. Generally it's test or development, some non-prod system, because you'll probably be moving records around like crazy and creating records. So usually only takes us a few minutes to connect to your system. Usually takes us a few hours and maybe a phone call or two to walk through to get everything working, because Cherwell is one of those tools where people change a lot of different things. So what works on our out-of-the-box boards might not work. You may have a different statuses at the top or different actions that you want to run, the drop actions. So you may have different one steps that we need to run for drop actions. But generally it's pretty quick to set up. We can usually turn it around in just a couple days, kind of a fully working system. And then you can test it. You can log in as yourself. We can also take a backup of your system and set it up in a sandbox. So if you're on premise and don't mind your backup going out to our sandbox, if you're on premise, that might be the easiest way. We do have an on-premise setup for this also. So you need another, like a little web server, like 2 processors, 4 gigs of RAM, but this can be installed in IIS now. That's also pretty recent. So it's not just Azure anymore. So if you're on premise, you have a couple options. We can either come in with our Azure system through your firewall, or you can set it up on premise. And then normally we get access via VPN or something, so we can at least do the initial setup, and we can do some training so you can take it over. But all the services are included with it. So if you subscribe to the Kanban service, you get all the setup. We'll build as many boards for you as you want, do whatever you want in the system. We'll also train you so you can take it over. So if somebody asks for a board, you don't have to come back to us to build the board. You can just create it. And you also get a test and a production system, so you can do builds and test if you want, move that over to production. A lot of these boards people just build in production because they can just assign them to themselves for kind of testing, and they can create tickets for themselves. And then once they've tested it out, they can assign that board to whoever needs access to it. But you can also do that in test. And we have a little utility to move that over. But yeah, so you get, and if you need more than 2 environments, that's not a problem. We can give you more. I think all of our customers just have 2 right now. Yeah, if you want to test drive any of our other products, our native mobile client, our chatbot, those are kind of our big 3: native mobile, chatbot, and then the Kanban Gantt. So if you want to test drive any of those, just let Laura or Steve Day know, and we'll set up a system. Generally, I'll send you an email with what we need, and you send that back, and we get it set up in a couple hours, and we can do a walkthrough with you. So were there any other questions, Laura?
Yes, we had a couple roll in.
Okay.
Start at the top here. So the Kanban boards are basically in an alternate view to update and access CSM tickets.
That is correct. That you can think of it as just Cherwell's Web Client 2.0. That's all it is. We just built our own client for Cherwell. So you can use our client exclusively, or you can use our client in conjunction with Cherwell. I would say most people that are using these Kanban boards, they just don't go into the Cherwell client anymore, unless it's like PPM or something that's really complex where you need a big screen and it's all set up already. But like for incidents and tasks, because you can create, right? If I want to create a new ticket, I can create it here. If I want to update, I can throw whatever fields that you need to update on there. So you can do pretty much everything in our framework that you can do in Cherwell. So, but yeah, you're right. It just is another client for Cherwell.
Great, thank you. The next one is, how does Kanban fit into the converged Ivanti solution?
So Kanban, we're still waiting to find out. So they're releasing in beta the first kind of converged solution. So we're waiting to get our hands on that. Right now, we have our products mostly working with the Ivanti ISM, But that's going to change pretty dramatically as they add the Cherwell functionality in. And one of the things that is changing dramatically is the API. So we're hoping we have quite a few holes in our solution for Ivanti's ISM right now that Ivanti is telling us that the Cherwell API will fix. So Ivanti's API isn't very good, to be honest, compared to Cherwell's. It's maybe got 25% of the functionality of Cherwell's. So it's just not great. So we have a lot of holes in the solution. Drag and drop in simple updates work, but some of the more complex things we do, even something as simple as type ahead, doesn't work with Ivanti where it works with Cherwell. So as that converged solution comes out, we'll keep modifying. What we're hoping is that the framework that we have, 90% of it will work with the converged solution without us having to do anything as they adopt Cherwell's API. Because just the way we interact with that API should make it really easy. So customers that move to the Converge platform, we'll probably want to test, but my best guess is it'll just be like doing a Cherwell upgrade. Customers that use our products and upgrade Cherwell, nothing ever breaks. It always just works. Unless they do like a content upgrade and dramatically change the content. But if you're just doing binary upgrades, we don't have the issues like that Cherwell does upgrading. They rarely have any issues with their API. So we expect the same thing with convergence, that any customers running this on Cherwell that go to the Converge platform, we won't have to do much, if anything, to make it work. We'll have everything nailed down by then.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, how do the card views address large numbers of people on a team and large numbers of cards?
Well, I mean, you can really only stick so many people in a column across the top, right? I think I've got one in here. Yeah, so this has got quite a few. So the bigger monitor you have, the more people you can stick across the top, right? So, so you can see that I have quite a few users across here. I mean, if you've got 50 users, you just can't fit them in here, right? You're just not going to be able to fit 50 people across here. We do have a board limit of 1,000 records. If you're pulling more than 1,000 records into a Kanban board, you probably need more than one Kanban board. So Kanban boards are meant to be used by either individuals or small teams of users, right? So you wouldn't have a team of 50 using a single Kanban board, probably. If you did, you'd have to figure out some other design, because this design just isn't going to work. Maybe you could do it with statuses, but there is limited screen real estate. You can always scroll down, but it does get difficult to see tickets that are scrolled down, 500 records down in a list. So these definitely work best if you can keep the records to something manageable, something that'll fit on the screen, or something that'll fit close to the top of the screen. So if I look at like this unified My Tickets, I've got hundreds of records over here. So you can see I can scroll through them, no problem. But this is a few hundred records down. So Kanban boards are meant to be like actionable. So when is somebody going to act on this? Probably never. Maybe they'll move it up. So I could move this. I could put it here and move it up to the top. But you can see it's a lot of scrolling to get this up to the top. We don't really have a move to top action on here. So you can see I'm scrolling, and it's scrolling pretty fast, but there's just a lot of records in here. So if I want to move this one to the top, it's just going to take a while. So I have a shortcut where I move it here and then scroll up. So now it's assigned. So now I've assigned it. Now I can put it back into new. So that's kind of a shortcut. Yeah. So if you've got like 50 users and 1,000 records, you could still do it. Like I said, you could break it down. So if we look at this all open incidents, I don't even know how many I have. I've got hundreds and hundreds. I don't know if I've got 1,000. But I can break this down by tag. So if I just say, I just want to look for Gina and me, and Josh Wilson. So you can break it down. So that's probably how you would work with that. You still have this problem of too many users across the top, but you can minimize those also. So if we look at where's the all ITP? All projects, I think I called it. ITPT active projects. So, if I had a few more on here and some people I didn't care about, you can get rid of them, and then you can fit quite a few more on here. That's actually what I do with like the board that we use for development. So if I look at this board, I've got a lot of statuses on here, but a lot of these I just get rid of, right? So I don't really care if my new product idea column, I kind of get rid of test, tissues, implement. I kind of don't need those. So I just get rid of those. So I have a lot more on here, but so if I opened all these up, you can see it start to shrink and I can't see like, what is this? You can still fit quite a few on here, but usually I have these minimized, so because I don't care about them as much as some of these other ones. So that's a good question, though. I think it's difficult when you have a lot of records. This is really meant for like more agile teams.
Okay, thanks. We kind of touched on this, but just for clarity, let's address it again. What's the typical implementation effort?
Depends a lot on the client, but we do all the work. So we need the customer usually to help us test and to identify their use cases. What do they want to use the boards for? So I would say our general customer we implement for, they're probably going to have a half a dozen hours or so into an implementation. Usually we spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours across the implementation, maybe across 2 or 3 weeks, kind of depending on how the testing is going and stuff. So, but we've had some that have taken longer, have lots of different use cases, or maybe they want a feature that we don't have and we have to wait for a week to pop that feature out. So I worked with a customer to get the features for, the color bars and the different, well, the coloring we had, but the different patterns here. So, that took us about a week to kick out. So that put their implementation back a little bit, but you're generally looking at maybe a half a dozen hours or so on your side and a couple weeks of kind of back and forth and testing. If we buckled down and we could do it in a day, right? We could just get on the phone and get everything done in a day. But usually it's spread over a couple weeks and a few hours here and there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next two are kind of related. Does this work well in a hosted environment?
Yeah, hosted actually works best because it's super easy to connect. So if you're hosted with Cherwell, we can connect to you in less than 5 minutes and have this up and running. If you're on premise, we just have some issues getting firewall. Although I did just hook something like this up for an on-premise customer who already had the firewall rule in place, so that turned out to be really simple. But yeah, hosted customers with Cherwell or Ivanti, really easy for us to connect to and set up a demo site. We can set up SAML login really easily with them. Usually everything's set up properly for an app like this to connect. So we can set it up in get connectivity in just a few minutes and then kind of manage it from there. So yeah, much easier to set up hosted than on-premise. On-premise, we also have an on-premise option where this can run an IIS on your network, so behind your firewall. So we do have some customers that like that because they don't have a firewall open to their Cherwell API server. So it's a good way to get them access to this. The downside is if we don't have access to that system, we kind of have to do screen shares in order to do all the initial setup, which can just slow us down a little bit. But it's a good training option. So the customers we have on premise, we've had to do that for get on the job training for all the setup. So we don't have to do a separate. Normally we do all the setup and then we'll come back and do the training. But in that scenario, they get trained as we do the setup because they're usually doing the setup for us and we're walking them through it. So.
All right, thank you. We've got just a couple of more questions. So
Okay.
If you have any remaining questions, please put those in the chat now to make sure we capture those before we hang up our webinar. So the next question I have is, after initial setup, can customer do minor changes and adjustments?
Yep. You'll have full access to our admin tool, which is I've got over here somewhere. So yeah, you can come into the Kanban board after your customer and you can change them. So for example, if I'm looking at like all open incidents and I'm looking at this all open incidents board and I say, oh, I really want to add another field to that board. you can just come over here, go into more card design, and you can pick the field out of here. So it's really easy to say, oh, I want to see what the call source is. So let's add call source as a tag there. So now if I go into the all open incidents, I'll be able to see call source. You can change these on the fly if you want. And you can create new boards. You can actually copy existing boards. So we can see here, I just added call source. So you can copy existing boards and make copies of them. So if you have a board you really like, but say, oh, I really need a couple more columns on this board, or maybe it's got a little bit different query, but I like the board. You can copy that board and make a new board out of it. And we've just got a really easy way for the queries to work. So you can see we can either do an ad hoc query or pull a query from Cherwell. So these are all the incident queries you have access to. They're just in the global folder in Cherwell. I like using ad hoc queries because then I can get exactly what I want. So I'm just pulling in where the status equals this. And there's some behind the scenes stuff where the ad hoc queries work a little better than the global queries too, but especially for the my boards. But yeah, so you'll have access to this and you'll get training on how to change this stuff if you want. And it's really pretty simple to make changes to it. So you can see here's statuses. You can see the drop actions on the statuses. Let me get rid of this query. So you can see when the card is dropped on a sign, what drop action do we run? Oh, let's run assign to a user. We have a new action. Let's run the create incident action for new. So it's really pretty simple to set these up, especially after we have one board set up for that object that you really like, and you're just kind of changing. Maybe you're changing the card format or maybe the query. So it makes it really simple.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The last question we have here is just around pricing. What's a typical installation ballpark pricing? We can explain how services are free, and then how is the Kanban licensed?
Yep, so the Kanban, we license for the number of Cherwell seats that you have. So if you've got 20 Cherwell seats, we license you 20 Kanban seats basically. And it's a yearly subscription. And depending on how many you have, you can figure if you're paying like subscription prices for Cherwell, it'll be somewhere under 10% of that. But it's generally around kind of on the high end, $20 per seat per month per user. So if you have 20 seats, it's going to cost you a little over $4,000 a month or a year for this. If you have 1,000 seats, it's going to be more. But we do big discounts for lots of seats too. So, and you can talk to the sales reps about pricing and talk to Steve if you've got special circumstances or something. But if you want specific pricing, we can send that to you. I really recommend doing a trial to make sure it'll work for you, and that you'll love it. And then you can get pricing, or we can send you pricing up front if you need it for budgeting or just you're curious. So we do also have the other thing. I'm going to do a presentation probably in the next few weeks, but we also have some actionable messages that are included with this. If you want to send actionable messages in emails, we have the card designer and the postback URL in this. So keep your eye open for that. That's a throw-in. So if you buy Kanban, you get actionable messages. So you can send these really cool messages out in email and have the users update the tickets or the approval or the survey right in the email without leaving the email. So that is really cool. So that's free with any of our products. You also get the Gantt with this, but if you're not doing project management, you may not have a use for that. And also the scheduling calendar. So if you have a need for scheduling calendar, that also is bundled with the Kanban and Gantt.
Okay. We have one more question that popped in. Do you want to throw up the final slide with my contact information? So if anyone wants to write it down with more questions or a request for pricing and a quote, feel free to reach out to me there. Or if you're connected with Steve Day, you can reach out to him as well if he is your rep here at StrataCom. So the last question I have here is, how difficult is it to change between dashboard and Kanban views?
So the Kanban is a standalone web URL. So you're not in the Cherwell client in here. So typically the way that customers will do it, they may put a link to our Kanban board on a dashboard and say, oh, show me this dashboard in a Kanban view, and it'll link out. So you're in a different browser tab basically for it. And so, if you click this button, like to get to the browser client, let's see if it'll log me in now. You can easily jump into the web client or the Windows client from here too. So, but they are separate. I would love to have this running in Cherwell, so you could just pull this up in Cherwell. But Cherwell's web widget won't run this. It's still tied to IE. Our system doesn't run in IE, so it just doesn't work. We have some JavaScript to handle the login and stuff. It just doesn't work. Now the nice thing is, if you're using SAML or single sign-on, you won't have to log in. You're automatically logged in to the system as soon as you open it. So you can bounce back and forth without having to log in or do anything like that. And you can go back and forth between dashboards and Kanban boards just by putting a link on the dashboard. So, but because this is kind of your interface, so when you're in this, if I'm in my unified view, my ticket, I don't really leave this to do anything, right? If I want to edit this ticket, I can edit it right from here. But it's not like Cherwell where I kind of going to a list of records and then coming back to the dashboard. I'm just kind of in this Kanban board all day long. So, but you can use it interchangeably with Cherwell. We do have a few customers doing that. I would say more common on the project management side. Usually what I would call resolver groups, people who are getting tickets and are sitting at their desk and working tickets all day, their development requests or break fix, they're quite happy not to ever go back into Cherwell's client and just to use this Kanban board. So I'd say probably 90% of users don't need to go back into Cherwell once this is set up.
Right. Thank you. It looks like that's all the questions we have. So again, reach out to us anytime for pricing, more information, free trial, or if you think of any questions after the fact, we'd love to help you out. As I mentioned earlier, this is being recorded, so we'll send out the recording in the next few days when we're able to get it loaded up onto our website. And we thank you for joining us. Hopefully it was interesting, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next meeting. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Laura.